all life is learning, not just when you're sitting in a particular place before a particular person and getting a particular credit for it. In fact, the real lessons of life are learned elsewhere. Not that you can't use those devices for some education, you should, but education is far more than the traditional classroom school.
Teaching happens person to person. It's not something that's in a book. It's alive and it's person to person, the living word.
This is where I live, Happiness Hills Farm, in the foothills of east central Kentucky near Berea. A place like this is too good to keep to oneself, especially if you were raised by my parents.
Both my family and Rosa's family, our homes were open. If there was food in the pantry, it was to be shared. If there was someone who needed a place to stay, we could be counted on. It didn't matter what size house we had or how full our pantry was. It was available. We've learned from our growing up in a family that was what my mother would call surrendered and sought God's guidance. We grew up in that kind of an atmosphere. Mother was the daughter of Moravian missionaries. She was born in Nicaragua. She was well educated, completed college at Moravian College. Dad, on the other hand, his family had come on hard times, and he had to quit high school and go to work. He never finished high school, but he was an avid reader and a very bright person. Ended up giving lectures at places like Harvard on matters of religion and labor. Dad was a steel worker and labor leader in the early years. He was the first president of the union at Bethlehem Steel Company before there was a steelworkers union. We had people in our little 4-room duplex in Pennsylvania from common workers, fellow workers of Dad, or unemployed people, which were often the case. They were all unemployed, to an English lord who stayed overnight with us. So we came out of that kind of background, that hospitality and not thinking of people in terms of class or position or race or anything that divided us was just part of our lives. There was no black and white. There was no poor or rich. People were people. So we grew out of a very blessed background. And so it wasn't unusual, I think, for us to respond to these opportunities and to find a kinship with the Grundtvig philosophy of folk education.
The Grundtvig philosophy of folk education. That might take some explanation. Grundtvig was a poet, hymn writer, philosopher in Denmark in the 1800s. He was a contemporary of Hans Christian Andersen and Søren Kierkegaard. But most importantly for this story, Grundtvig was the founder of what the Danes call the Folkehøjskole, or folk high school, and that had a major impact on our family.
My brother John had become a member of the Country Dancers when he came to college here, and when I came, I followed in his footsteps and also became a member of the Country Dancers. And it wasn't just country dance; it was dance with a philosophy behind it, a community recreation, a cooperative recreation kind of thing. The dancers sponsored an annual Christmas country dance school, which was at that time primarily for leaders of dance in high schools throughout the Southern Mountains. It wasn't just a school, it was an experience. We had some wonderful people coming to teach that, and we, as country dancers, got to participate in this, and John became a regular. He became part of the staff early on as a student and continued that through his lifetime.
I went to Berea College in 1947, became involved in folk dancing. Through that, I met some luminaries in the field of folk education. My dance teacher was Frank Smith, who was an Englishman, but he had been trained in Denmark at the one of the folk schools, and that influenced him. the folk school philosophy permeated the recreation movement, I realized that this folk school idea seemed to do something special to life in many places. My first time out of the United States, I went to Denmark. I guess it was 1971. And then I went back sometime later to take a look at these folk schools to learn about them. And what I resonated with was the idea of awaken, enliven, enlighten. Awaken means catch your attention. So a folk school realizes that first you need to get somebody's attention. Then the enliven is inspiring them to, oh, this is something for me. And then the enlighten is, oh, how is this going to fit into my life?
In 1970, I was called by President Weatherford of Berea and asked if I'd like to come and talk to him about becoming here as Dean of Labor. And we came back to Berea, and it was wonderful. In the third year we were here, 1973, Brother John had been in touch with people in Denmark about a more deliberate exchange between leaders and young people in regard to the folk movement. Rose and I had taken on the leadership of the high school age folk dance group in Berea at the time, and our children were involved. So they asked us if we would lead the first group as part of this exchange. Well, we knew nothing about Denmark, but we were excited about the possibilities, and we went to Denmark with a group of 12 young men and women. And that was our first sort of direct involvement in the folk school movement. So we got deeply immersed in the whole movement, and we learned who Grundtvig was and enjoyed reading some of his writings and his philosophy, which was very close, as I say, to much of what we had at Berea and what our experience had been at our home. We had wonderful visits with Danish people in our home and with Danish people over there in their homes over those years.
When you're a kid, you think your life is normal. I thought everybody knew where Denmark was and wanted to go there. I thought everybody's family opened their home to Danish dancers or gymnasts for a couple weeks in the summer for a semester while they went to the local college. I had no idea how lucky I was. Mom and Dad raised me and my 5 siblings with the philosophy, to whom much is given, much will be expected. And I believe that it is my responsibility to find meaningful ways to give back to the community and to the world that has given me so much.
We always like to have some land. So we started looking around for some property close to Berea to give the family a place to just to have some countryside. So we bought 80 acres of land that had a lake on it, had a stream running through it, and it had an old barn on it. Well, the barn was in the process of falling down. You know how old barns look when they start to lean to one side. Rose always loved barns anyway, so she didn't want to tear it down. But we were able to jack the roof up, put new pillars in, stabilize it, make it safe, and it did so well. We put a floor in it, a cement floor, and we had a wonderfully covered recreation area. There was a little stripping shed next to the barn that was used to strip the tobacco, and it was just a little block building with a dirt floor. But we thought, if we made this into a bathhouse, it would be very useful. So we decided that we might as well put a couple little bunks in there, and we made a very, very cozy and attractive little place with a little bathroom in it, a little kitchenette. Again, we felt an affirmation of this is a good thing. This is providing an opportunity for people to get together, very much in the mode of the folk school. There's no classification of people. People are people of all different types and can enjoy each other and should enjoy each other. Well, I had a clear sense of guidance that I should enlarge the facility and I wasn't too worried about how it was to be used. And Rose and I decided it was about time for us to give up running these things. Jennifer took over the management of the farm in 2015, I think it was, and they decided to build their home there. We have retired and still enjoy watching it grow and watching it develop.
I really never dreamed that he would decide to retire from it and hand me the keys. I was just helping him do something amazing because he needed the help and I could provide it. And also because I shared his vision of what this place could become. I don't remember who had the idea first to start a folk school here at the farm, but it stuck. We know how to do the arts. We know how to do education. We know how to do hospitality. We have a beautiful space to do all of that. Berea is the folk arts and crafts capital of Kentucky. But Berea College and the city of Berea already have major outreach programs in arts and crafts, including well-attended and heavily advertised craft classes and makers spaces. We felt like a folk school here at the farm focused on craft just wasn't going to be able to compete, so we felt stuck. How can a yes to folk school and a no to craft focus be successful? In 2019 and 2020, 3 things happened that really set us on the right path to answering that question. First, my dad decided that we needed another lodging facility or 2 to make the farm more solvent. So he found an Amish community not too far away that could build 2 log cabins for us and bring them here. Second, I went to a meeting in Denmark that brought together folk education leaders from all over the world, and I got totally inspired by the work being done with the original focus group for folk education, the young adult. The third thing that set us on the right path was the COVID pandemic. Not what we would have chosen. But when you see all of life as learning, even a pandemic can be an opportunity for growth. In mid-March of 2020, when Berea College shut down, 7 students and recent graduates ended up renting rooms out here for the remainder of the calendar year. We got to experience what it was like having a small group of young adults here long term without having to also design programming and meals for them. We learned a lot about living in community. And since all of my paid work got canceled, I had tons more time to focus on reading and dreaming about what I want to do here. And I had more time to talk with my family about our own folk school experiences, about our shared vision for folk school out here for young adults, and about how each of us feels about education in general.
I think folk schools are a good option for everybody. I think a folk school is a good place to make friends because it's a very community-focused place to be. My experience at a folk school is that it doesn't matter how fast or how slow anyone else was going in the class, you all get the same amount of attention. It's sort of a conversation rather than a lesson. There's lots of adults in our lives that are like, oh, well, you're done with high school, now you have to go to college. And it's kind of a mistake sometimes for people. And that's where the folk school would come in and I guess sort of save those lives.
I think educationally we've been brainwashed into thinking that there's only one way. You have to go to college. And some people are wired that way. A lot of people are not. Even when we got to Denmark and we see how healthy of an environment it is for the students when they learn more organic and self-directed and just that community feel. And I think we're missing that here.
Sometimes folk education is referred to as popular education or democratic education. But no matter what it's called, it is always relationship-oriented. Folk education recognizes that enlightenment happens in every direction. Teacher to student, student to teacher, student to student, teacher to teacher.
Let's have a conversation and let me see where your mind is. Let me see, what are you thinking? And we can kind of just find that little inner light in them of the idea. And we can kind of tweak it, we can turn it on, and hopefully they'll kind of leave here with a better understanding of where they want to go.
I'm well aware that what we're doing out here is unconventional, and it won't always be easy. We have an opportunity to make a difference, and everything in our lives so far has led us to this point.
You can change in your environment. You can change a town, a city, a country, just with a few. Now, are we going to do that? I don't know. But we can help people. We can help a few.
It's not earth-shattering. It's not immediately world-changing. But it will mean the world to a few people. And that makes it worthwhile.
If we don't do it, who's going to do it?